Good day, YouTube. Back with another video here, and as you can see, the progress to the 66 Impala still moves on here, slowly but surely. As you can see here today, I have the driver's side inner fender well hung, and this is the next thing that I'll be working on here. But as you can see, it came in a black primer, still has all these stickers on it. And I actually do still have the old inner liners, but the thing is they're just so corroded, and a lot of pitting and also rust areas where I would actually have to do some welding. So I've decided to just purchase some new ones. Now, before we move on here, got some acetone because amongst the surface areas of this inner fender weld, there is a lot of adhesive because it did come packaged with an edge liner around the areas, I guess for shipping purposes, so that there was no damage. Now, as you can see on the table here, after all of the prepping from removing all of the debris that was on the fender, we're moving on to our primer here. Now, I've decided to add another layer of primer after giving the fender well a nice scuff down, only because the sublime green that I am using actually lays down better over the white color, which I've come to realize. I did not even attempt to paint it over the black because there would be a difference, since, you know, depending on the amount of layers that you're using, the paint does have a translucent visual to it. So I've decided to go with the white because it seems to lay down better to me. Now, as you can see here, we got a good scuff down. And this is going to help for the adhesion purposes. I never spray paint over something that's shiny or look like it has like a clear to it or even a sheen. I would go the extra measure to scuff it down. Now, when hanging your parts, be careful with the old hinges that you use, because from all of the motion and movement, you do get a little bit of buildup on there. So from time to time, that buildup tends to start to crack, and it actually can fall on your part. And this is something I hate that happens, especially when you're already painting and then there's some sort of debris that's falling on your part. So I like to make sure that my part is hung properly, and just safety measures. See to it that if I could prevent a hazard or something from happening that would actually ruin the quality of my work, I try to take that extra measure just to make sure that those areas are taken care of. Now, just giving it a good wipe down with some glass cleaner. I like to use the glass cleaner because to me, it kind of not only works as a water contaminant that removes, I guess, certain things from the surface, but it also does a little bit of cleaning. Now, before applying the paint, I gave it a good air down. And we're moving on to our degreaser here so that surface can become real tacky since it's scuffed down. And this just helps the paint adhere to the body part much better. Now, I'll give it a good wipe down with some lint-free microfiber towels here. Make sure everywhere is covered, wiped properly so that there's no buildup. There's no added, I guess, chemicals that would cause the primer not to stick as I would like. And every surface area plays a part here, because you don't want to have a surface where everything looks good and then you look around, there's an area that doesn't. Now, just like I said about the debris here, as you can see, because of all of the prior projects that I've done, there's just so much paint buildup on my stand here. So you want to make sure that you give everything a good hard blowout so that you remove any loose chips that can fall onto your part here. But so far so good. Just taking the extra measures to see to it that everything is okay. So not only blowing down the frame, which is holding the rear fender, I'm giving the fender also a nice blow just to see to it that whatever can land onto it is actually removed. Because I try to remove as much as I can before the painting process, because we don't want those little particles actually mixing in with the paint, because that also causes a problem to remove. Now setting up the paint gun for the primer here, as you can see, just doweling everything in, making sure that the right amount of paint that I want to come out of the gun is actually set right, but also the right amount of air pressure. And as you can see here, I'm getting good atomization. The Fuji T-model spray guns, I can truly say that they're actually good, comfortable, high-performance guns, at least from what I know, from my experience with them. I haven't had any issues, and as you can see here, the paint is laying down fairly well. There's no issues with runs, and if there was, that only would be because something I might have done wrong in my technical decisions. But because this fender is angled and it has a oval shape to it, as you're doing your passes, you're kind of inward towards the outer portions of the fender when you're spraying the top, but then it kind of comes out. So you're kind of trying to keep your pattern like in a rainbow pattern, where you're kind of in, but then you're moving inward when you're on the inner side of the fender, so that your fan pattern stays symmetrical here. But yes, just doing some small passes, seeing to it that I have good coverage so that all of the black primer is completely covered with the white. Now I only gave it one medium layer of the primer here. I don't want to say a heavy layer, because I did not actually want to build the primer up. This is just a layer so that the sublime green that I'm laying on the fender will actually lay down a little better over the white paint, and it brings it out, actually, in my opinion. So we'll let that sit. It's actually one coat, but wherever I saw that there were not even passes, I did give it a light pass through again. And as you can see here, everything is fairly covered. Does have like a shine to it, but in time, as it's going through its phase here, you will see that it transitions into a much more sheen appearance here. Now on a table here, I got an assortment of guns, all of the materials that I would need for the actual mixing of the color pigmentation, and also my clear coat. And this is the single stage sublime green that I'm using here, and it's a 3-to-1 mix with a reducer and a activator. Now this is a single stage, and that's why it's actually set up in that pattern, because it has your paint and also your clear in one combined package here. Now this is, I'd say, maybe 15 to 20 minutes after And that sheen look, as I explained earlier, you can see that most of the clear is gone from the primer. Now I'm just mixing up my pigment here. Now I chose not to give it too much of a layer of pigmentation, but because this is what I chose to do for the vehicle, I actually do want to apply a light coat of that, even though it's in an area of the automobile that does not show itself unless you're looking under the hood. But I kind of want to keep it matched to what the rest here is. Now, as you can see, that primer actually flashed off. It's dry, has a sheen look, no runs from what I see here. And I pretty much got all my three phases of my paint set up here. And as you can see, we have our sublime green. And then right after that, I'll be applying the color pigmentation, which I mixed with my clear coat. And then after that, there's my layer of clear, which I will pass over the pigmentation here. So back to the painting here. Just getting my gun set up with the 3M PPS cups here. Always give yourself some extra time to make sure that your gun and your cup is actually sealed tight, because once that pressure is produced through the line here, you can get leakage. Sometimes it's just buildup that you may have over the ring of the cup. So when you do screw on the top, it does not seal as tight as it can. But as you can see here, so far so good with the sublime green. I can't complain with the atomization. Everything is actually laying down nice, as I would like. And as you can see here over the white primer, it actually stands out. And also with this white primer, it does not require that I use a lot of paint, as I would probably need to over the black primer. It actually covers the surface area as well. And I'd say just on the first coat alone, I had good coverage, good atomization. And I believe I did give it a second coat, but if I wanted to, just that one coat would have passed. So I gave it some time to flash off, and I did kind of run over the same areas one more time just to see to it that everything was nicely symmetrical, so that there were no off pattern areas within the fender here. But just remember, when you're working with parts that have angulations, you want to make sure with your fan pattern that you're keeping the same distance, that you're not veering off of your distance, but you're staying at a symmetrical measure with your paint gun here. Extra lighting also helps. I chose to wear the overhead light, but at the same time I did have an extra light which I chose to hang over the top of the fender here, just to see to it that there were no color shifts in the paint, so that I can actually judge it a little better to determine whether I need to give it an extra coat or not. But so far so good. Everything is laying down nice, kind of just making sure that I have not missed any spots, especially where your part is hung, because the hooks that actually hold the fender in place do interfere around the rings. But these are just hole rings where the bolts would actually bolt on. But as you can see here, YouTube, after laying down the paint, I'd say this is probably after 2 or 3 minutes. I just grabbed the camera and I just wanted to give you a quick walk around just to see how the part is flashing. But also remember, because this is a single stage paint, as you can see here, not only did the green lay down well, but it also has a nice clear coat coverage to it. And that's our 3-to-1 mix with the activator, what actually in turn caused the paint to actually flash off pretty well, and it has a good shine to it. But moving on here, that's just the second step after the primer, which was the first. This is our pigmentation. And then after our pigmentation, this is our clear coat here. And I have a gun actually for all 3 phases. That way I'm not using the same gun. I kind of like to separate it because in turn, while the parts are flashing, I disassemble the guns and I kind of let the parts sit in a paint thinner. That way the parts do not gum up. Now moving on here, as you can see with the pigmentation, I am not doing a heavy coat. This is just a light pass. And as you will see here, there's no shine to it, even though this is a clear coat that I'm using. But because of my distance and the small amount of pigmentation that I'm using, it actually went over the sublime green and it gave it a sheen look. The clear coat was completely depleted. And at the same time, as you can see, that sublime green is shifting in colors due to the sublime green here. And the flakes that are being applied is actually adding that extra appearance that I was looking for. So we'll move on here, and then after the pigmentation is applied, I'll let this sit for about 10 minutes, and then I'll do a pass of the clear coat here. So I'm kind of just checking all the areas, seeing to it that I have nice coverage so that everything is symmetrically balanced here. So I'll let that flash off for a couple of minutes here, and then I'll just examine a part to see if there's any light areas that may need some more coverage. And what I've decided is to give it just a small pass again, because the more layers of the pigmentation that you add here, it does strengthen the shift in paint. And also, because of that, you can see that the sublime green is losing the green tone effect that it has. It has much more of a yellow balanced appearance because of that. Now, this is the outcome of the pigmentation here. As you can see, there's certain areas that kind of have a sheen look, but if you actually give it a close look, you can see that the sublime green layer is actually still there, but the pigmentation kind of hides that appearance of it, and it actually looks nice. It has a sheen look to it. And then from this point, I'll pretty much apply the clear coat just to give it that added shine that I'm looking for again. Now the flakes in the pigmentation are fairly small here. They don't present itself as large flakes because they kind of bind together to give it that shift. Now moving on here, I'd say about after 15 minutes of applying the pigmentation, I'm moving on to the clear coat. I did give it that much time to actually flash, but at the same time I did not want it to completely flash since the pigmentation was added on to the same clear. So applying the clear over the pigmentation, which is not fully flashed. It kind of works as a adhesive, I would say, because it's blending in with the pigmentation. Not to where it's covering the pigmentation, so it won't hide the strength of it, but it does add that extra gloss to it. And as you can see, after the clear is applied here, I'm kind of just moving in my same patterns, seeing to it that all my passes are even, my distance is good, my speed staying the same, but it's kind of difficult because of the angle of the panel here. And as you will see, I did get a couple of runs, but that's fine. Just add extra work to what I'm doing here, but towards the end of the video, you will also see that I ended up having to give the panel a quick wet sand and buff, which corrected those errors, I would call them. Yes, but just slow passes here. I'm looking at the panel, seeing to it that the clear is actually being applied evenly so that I don't get runs. And you also want to be careful because as you're doing your passes, any slight slow motion from how you're moving could also cause a run. So that's something you want to be careful with here. But yes, just small passes through and out, making sure that I have good coverage. Balance plays an important role when it comes to applying your clear coat. Not only that I've come to find that your speed, your distance, and your time are important roles when it comes to wanting the perfect finish, but also the amount of fluid clear that you allow to come out of the gun also plays an important role because from some of the passes here, I started to get like a dry run. The clear was actually drying as it was being applied to the surface of the gun here. So I kind of had to slow down my passes just to see to it that the passes were a bit more wet over the surface of the panel here. So this is just the first coat, and I kind of just want everything to flash off. But as you can see, it's still settling here. It does have a much more shinier appearance, and it's laying down well. And moving on here after the second pass, as you can see, I went a little heavier because I was experiencing dry passes where the clear coat was actually drying, and there were just white particles all over, so I wanted to correct that. But at the same time of attempting to correct that, I did get a few runs there, but no need to worry. This is just the inner fender, and after the application of everything here, I knew it already that this was going to require more attention, so I ended up having to wet sand those areas. But as you can see, the clear coat fairly laid down well. Not as good as I would have liked it to, but since I have already started this process, kind of where there's a will, there's a way type of thing. So this is where the wet sanding and buffing came into play. Now, as you can see here, after about 30 minutes, I would say, this is our outcome here. We have a couple of runs which I am working on. Well, this is not 30 minutes. I actually let this sit for a whole day. And this is actually the next day here. I'm giving those runs a bit more attention. since it's hardened from this point. And rather than to sand it down, the runs were so heavy, I actually had to razor cut the areas, and pretty much just a scraping. And once I saw that that line of the run began to deplete itself to where the outside neighboring areas of that run started to scratch off, that's where I stopped, because I did not want to dig in any deeper. But as you can see here, the more I actually do my passes of the razor, it lowers the run, but at the same time, the neighboring sides of that run starts to scratch off also. And this is where precaution takes place, because you don't want to dig in too deep. But as you can see here, yes, I'm being fairly aggressive with the passes of the razor here. You want to be very careful. I'm not a professional when it comes to actually wet sanding and buffing, but enough to get me by. And I kind of enjoy the process of kind of making my errors, but at the same time figuring out how can I fix those areas. So now, as you can see here, I got a soft pad. I pretty much decided to wet sand the whole surface of the fender here. And as you can see, it has that dull appearance again, but that's just the clear coat. And what I did, I actually went over the whole panel with a 800 grit sandpaper, and then I went up to 1,000 grit, and that's where I stopped. I saw to it that all of the areas were actually symmetrical and had a dull finish to it. And from that point on, I grabbed my buffer here, and I just got the buffing. And as you will see, things will start to look a little better. So I'm kind of still sanding down, giving it a good quick pass of the sandpaper. I actually like the sponge that I'm using, because this is such an angled panel. Using a hard board would actually dig in too deep on the areas of the curvature where it's making contact. And this soft pad kind of allows me to contour with the angle of the fender here. So I'm kind of just doing light passes, a little on the fast side, but at the same time, I'm being cautious to where I'm not removing over the amount of clear that I would like to. But as you can see, the surfaces are starting to look a bit more symmetrical. And once all of the areas are covered, I will start to actually buff the panel. Now, this is the actual final process here, where I've decided to stop with the wet sanding and buffing. And as you can see, it's a dull finish. That run is fairly still there. It's a little better, but I did not want to dig too deep, because that's actually a run from the clear coat, and it's so close to the pigmentation. I did not want to lose that surface area, so I kept it where it was. Now, this is just some 3M compound that I'm using here, and just taking my time doing slow passes with the buffer, giving it, I'd say, about 50 seconds over the one area, but also watching it, seeing what it's doing, because buffing also goes through its phases, to where you're applying your compound, but then it needs time to actually settle and kind of burn through the surface of the clear. And when it does that, it kind of combines with it to give it that shine again. So keeping my eyes on the buffer and also the panel, and seeing what it's doing, and pretty much just playing it by eye, because there's not like a certain time when you should stop. But once I saw shine, and I kind of judged the area, looked at it to see if it actually was getting the shine back, and then I would pretty much just stop there and move on to another portion of the panel here. Make sure you always use a clean microfiber towel when you're passing. And from time to time after buffing, you want to just wipe that area just to see how the surface area actually presents itself. And then you decide whether you should buff a little more or move on to your next spot. But as you can see here, compared to the dull area, side by side, you can see that that shine is actually coming back. Now this is the clear coat area that was actually still on the panel. Now moving on here after all of the buffing, as you can see, we have our shine back on the panel. Like I said, the runs that are there are fairly minimal, but as far as the appearance of the fender, I do like what I see here. And there are times, mistakes do happen, but you have to work with what you have, and just from the skills, try to gain as much knowledge as you can. That's actually what I did, and this is the final outcome.